Welcome back to The Big Picture. We are in conversation with Sanjeev Sanyal, the author of this latest book, The Ocean of Churn. Sanjeev, there's a very interesting factoid that I also want to draw my viewers' attention to. I think, interestingly, what you've said is that the relationship between India and the Gulf countries, and you talk about how till the 1960s, Indian rupee was used as a legal tender. RBI had issued special Gulf rupees.
Yes.
And it was discontinued because Indira Gandhi had devalued Indian rupee in 1966. Tell us a little more about this.
Yes, so basically, it's quite amazing that, Indian standards of various kinds, whether it's the currency or various standards, were used by the Gulf countries over thousands of years. And it really goes back all the way to the Harappan period, where you have Harappan weights and measures used in Oman. So this is a really long relationship we've had with the Gulf. Arabs coming to India to trade, Indians going there to trade. And of course, as you mentioned, right into the 60s, the Indian rupee being the standard currency in that part of the world. Incidentally, something similar happens on the other side of, as well. Remember, India's been trading with Indonesia for thousands of years. And having become independent, what do? They call themselves Indonesia, which is naming themselves after India.
Right.
They call their currency the rupiah, after the rupee.
Yeah.
So these relationships are very deep and with real live influence to this day.
And you also, also throw light on the unique sort of characteristics of this region. And you talk about the matrilineal society, which is, again, very less understood. And you say that that may be the reason why this part of this world has seen so many strong, powerful female leaders.
Absolutely.
Just expound a bit on that.
It's quite astonishing. If you look at the western and eastern sides of the Indian Ocean, there's a huge contrast in the importance of women. And this cuts across religion, region, whatever. I mean, Bangladesh, Indonesia, India, Philippines, all these countries have had women leaders.
Burma now.
Yeah, Burma. And you simply don't see them in, the Africa or the Middle East. But this has its roots going back, way back into Neolithic times, and the importance of matrilineal societies, which go back to ancient times and have had enormous influences. For example, the dynasties in Cambodia, the great Angkor Empire. These were matrilineal dynasties. It was all about marrying into the royal Naga family. And that's how you became king. You were either the husband or son or, of a Naga princess. That's how you gained royal legitimacy. And this influences us all the way down to today. It's just amazing.
So therefore, considering the, the role even India played in this, this entire region, is there any way, are we really sort of utilizing our position or our historical links? Because we don't often talk about India's relations with the ASEAN countries. We have a free trade agreement, but that's also limping. So in that sense, have we done enough, to actually sort of forge our historical ties, to actually have more closer cooperation?
No, so this is exactly the point I'm making. That the problem with having a Delhi-centric view is that Pakistan and China seem to be the only neighbors we have. But if you take a maritime view of the matter, suddenly Indonesia becomes our neighbor, Oman becomes our neighbor, South Africa becomes our neighbor. And this is a very dramatically different way of thinking about it. Now, take Indonesia. The contrast with Pakistan is amazing. Here is Pakistan, which tries very hard. Official policy is to try and deny its link to Indic civilization. And here is Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim country, very proud of its link to Indian civilization. In fact, it is so proud, as I mentioned, they call themselves Indonesia. They name their currency after us. Their national airline is called Garuda. Their president before the last one was called Meghavati Sukarnoputri. They far from denying their links to ancient Indian civilization. They consider themselves an embodiment of it.
Right. Final two questions then, Sanjeev. What happens now? Like we've seen in the recent past, a lot of geopolitical tension, especially in the South China Sea. We've got the, the Hague verdict also in the recent past. What are the historical sort of roots to this present crisis?
So you have to realize that all this geopolitics we are seeing now has happened many times before in the Indian Ocean. So the Indians, the Chinese have been competing for influence over Southeast Asia for a very long time. And in the 1400s, they had the Admiral Zheng He came here with a series of voyages from China and basically established geopolitical dominance over the Indian Ocean in the early 1400s. And then because of internal politics in China, the Navy withdrew in the middle of the 15th century. And this left a vacuum.
Right.
And this vacuum was filled up by, guess who? Portugal. So what does it tell you about long-term history? That you have got to be very careful about what happens, because you have so many unintended consequences of political and geopolitical maneuverings. I mean, who would have thought that a country from the Atlantic was going to basically come and dominate the Indian Ocean?
So how can history then help us foretell, or at least reasonably predict what the future could hold for this region?
First of all, one thing is there that one has to be less sure about where history goes, because it's full of these unintended consequences, first of all. So that's one. The second thing to learn is that there was to be this idea about the end of history. There is no end to history. It goes through cycles, it goes through dead ends. We right now have Turkey and Iran competing for dominance of the Middle East, but they have been doing this for thousands of years. India and China have been competing for thousands of years, and frankly, this will probably go on forever.
Sanjeev Sanyal, many congratulations again for this book, and this is the book, The Ocean of Churn. Please go get yourself a copy. Thank you very much. We completely run out of time on this big picture. I'll be back tomorrow night.